Hello everybody and welcome back to Best Builds, the show where we put together the best PC builds you can build right now with the help of the internet. Obviously these are inspired by the real builds we put together in the flesh right here on the channel, so hit the card in the top right corner of your screen if you want to see some of these. But if you're looking for real world pricing, probably some of the best deals you can find right now, and of course the best sort of PCs you can put together at the budget, the mid-range, and of course the high end, then you are in the right place right here, right now. So let's get started right after a short word from this video sponsor. The Gigabyte G5 is the gaming laptop for those that want to play the latest games without spending an arm and a leg. Packing the latest RTX 40 series graphics, the Gigabyte G5 is ready for jaw-dropping ray tracing and frame rate boosting DLSS 3. Learn more about this 144Hz gaming beast today with the link down below. Right, let's waste no time at all then and actually jump straight in with our budget-friendly build. And we're going to be using Newegg for this one, but if you do want to hit localized currency, then you can find my Amazon links and Newegg and all of the different links for all of this stuff located down below. And actually, I want to start off with a Core i3 and probably a 12100F. So this is $95. And obviously this is not going to be the best processor you've ever seen in your world. I mean, it's only a 4-core CPU. It's very close to being 2 generations back. But the thing I like about it is that it does actually have decent quad-core performance. So especially if you're playing some older titles or multiplayer, it's not actually going to cause you too much of an issue. It's not going to be ideal, make no mistake about it. But here's the thing, you're not going to be pairing this with a massively high-end GPU either, and as long as you're viewing this as a temporary solution to get you by and then you can sell it a little bit later down the line and you can upgrade it to like a Core i5, maybe even a Core i7, then you're actually maximizing your bang for buck, because we've got a full video actually on CPUs I think coming next week. Please get subscribed for that if you're not already, because it will show you exactly why this is such a good deal, because as long as you're playing a game that doesn't need loads of cores, this is going to be a strong option. You just can't really multitask that much whilst you're gaming, but I think for most people that's probably fine. So let us add this to our basket and then we can move on to the motherboard. And obviously we're going to try and find one that is as cheap as possible, but that still has all of the features that we need. Newegg do have a sale on this B660M board, but to be honest, for the extra $10 that you can spend to step up to the 760M, I would say that is worth it. So we're going to have a look at this. But as you can see, this is a cheaper motherboard, but it's absolutely not the cheapest of the cheap. You've got some cooling there on the VRMs, you've got 4 RAM slots, and in terms of I/O, it's not the best in the world. So if you do want to spend more money, you will get more USB ports and things, but if you're starting out, you're trying to save money, I'd say this is a solid option. Let's proceed to have a look at some computer cases now, shall we? And as I say, I do want to have a look at the Micro ATX variants, as it's going to be a better fit really for our motherboard. And let's see what we have going from low to high. A lot of them rely on a few like gimmicks and things. You'll find you've got RGB fans and that looks great, but then there'll be Molex fans or they won't be very high quality. So you do have to choose very carefully at this end of the market, but you can get the Q300L, which is the master box from Cooler Master. I think I've used a previous version of this. They've updated it over the years. And while it's not necessarily the best for cable management, it is actually a pretty solid chassis if you are going to go for a budget-friendly option. So I quite like this. We're going to go for it in black, $40. Add that to our basket. And then it's the case of the biggest component, or at least the most interesting of the lot, the graphics card. And I think if you are trying to save as much money as possible, then used probably is going to be the best approach. But just so we can do a bit of a comparison, I'm going to look at a RX 6600 and see how much that is new. And the cheapest one is around about $210. And this is a fantastic GPU because it gives you, well, great performance really across the board at 1080p. It does only have 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but for 1080p gaming, this is going to be absolutely fine. It's going to excel in games like Apex Legends and things. And while you can't take this one-to-one because there's a different CPU, we should now be overlaying some gameplay where we actually had a 6600 in our system, and as you can see, the frame rate is actually surprisingly impressive. But I do want to see if we can get this cheaper on the used market, so let's head over to eBay. This one looks like quite a decent option actually. Starting bid of $90, it will go for $150 buy it now, so maybe you can get it for about $135, $140. Pictures, well, it's actually taken in a home. It's not from someone that has like a crazy amount of feedback or anything like that, but personally I think that's quite good. eBay guarantee, so if it doesn't work, you will of course get your money back. I think we're going to go with this, $150 $50. Let's add it to our basket. Let's move across now and actually shop for some memory. I would like to point out that you will need to double check whether your motherboard is DDR4 or DDR5. This one is DDR4, so obviously we do need to shop for that, but it does tend to be a fair bit cheaper anyway. Not crazy different, but definitely a bit cheaper, so it probably is better for a budget-friendly PC anyway. And then let's have a look what we have. Well, we've got this stuff from T-Force that does always tend to be a pretty good option actually at the lower end of things. This is a 3200 megahertz kit. I've actually used this stuff before. I think I've got some in my drawer, albeit at a lower speed, and yeah, I didn't have any issues with this. It's called the Vulcan Z. $30.99. Obviously you can step up to more memory later, you can double it up or get 32 from the off, but for a budget-friendly gaming PC, 16 gigs should be absolutely fine. So let's add this to our basket. We then go right ahead and look at our SSDs. We go for a 500 gig SSD. In terms of other brands and things, there's also one from PNY, one from Team Group, and one from Crucial. So I'll do the usual thing, which is to compare all of the speeds. Intel is 3000, 1600. The PNY is actually a SATA SSD, which means it's got much slower speed, so we're going to discard that straight away. So is the Team Group, but then we have the P3. And this one comes in at 3500, 1900, which does beat the Intel, but I must admit, if you come up here, you'll see for just $3 more, you can get the P3 Plus that is indeed a Gen 4 SSD. And if we look at the specs of this, you should find much faster speeds with a read speed up to 4700. Granted, the write isn't really any better. I mean, it's actually rated the same, but for direct storage where you're actively reading the SSD very quickly, this is going to make quite a big difference, whereas the write isn't. So I would say go with this for $33. And I think now that there's actually only one more component to go, which is the power supply. And you're probably thinking, what about the cooler? Well, actually, I would advise just using the Intel stock cooler that comes with your CPU, because you can always swap this out later, and as it's in the box, you can basically call it free. It's not going to be the quietest, it's not going to be the absolute best, but actually for an i3 that really doesn't generate much heat, it's going to be absolutely fine anyway. Let's have a look. Well, there's this non-modular one here from Thermaltake for $66. Rosewell for $80, that is actually fully modular. And actually turning it down from low to high and removing the efficiency ratings doesn't give us many different options. You've got this one from Thermaltake that you could use for $45. So I mean, actually I think this one from Thermaltake's probably going to be a good shout, but as we mentioned earlier, do be advised that the case that we're using, as I say, isn't the best for cable management, so it might be worth stepping up to at least a semi-modular one, which they do have here. It's not as well rated for efficiency, but I think this is going to be more practical in the chassis. So it's also from Thermaltake, Smart BM3, $70. Let's add this one to our basket. And that does indeed bring our total to $542.35, plus obviously plus applicable taxes. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this rig, but obviously it goes out to you. What do you think on this? Have I got it right? Have I got it completely wrong? Let us know in the comments, but let's press on to the mid-range build. And for this one, we're gonna travel all the way across the ocean to good old Blighty. And I'm really excited about this one because there's a chassis at the moment I've been obsessed with, and I wanna start with this. And I've actually already built with this on the channel. You can find this in the top right corner of your screen. And it's called the Fantex MV5. And they've almost taken a bit of a leaf out of Liam Lee's book, because you don't get any fans with this, but you do get a really well-built chassis. It's very modern, and as long as you are happy to put your own fans in, it's actually not too expensive either. It's here at £85, which is pretty darn cool, but obviously once you've added the fans, it will start to get very expensive. But this is such a good-looking chassis. I want to start with this. We're going to start kitting this out by looking at motherboards first, and we're going to say goodbye to Intel, at least for now, and I'm going to move across to AMD. I think they just have crazy good CPUs, really. There's a lot more upgradability there, and if you are spending a bit more money, then this is when AMD really does start to sort of make more sense. So we're going to go with this. So we're going to filter this now into B650, and you can see that the prices are actually pretty good, but the main thing you do need to be aware of is that there is a big difference between B650 and B650E, because if you go for the E version, then you get PCI Gen 5 on the graphics, which is great because it's more future-proof, but then you do have to spend more money to get there. So I suppose it's going to depend how much you're going to spend potentially in the future, whether you're going to keep this motherboard for ages or whether you're going to swap it out for something else. There is actually quite a big difference in price. I mean, you're looking at about $180, $190 for a decent B650 motherboard, or if you come down here, you're looking at least 250 if you want to go for B650E. But we're going to do that here today because I do want it to be as future-proof as possible. This also has Wi-Fi built in, and as you can see, it's a very good-looking board that's got a lot of features. So let's add this one to our basket. We then open up a view of our Ryzen CPUs, and obviously we're going to want to make sure we've got the latest generation, so we go to Ryzen 7000 series, and here we can have a look at pricing. We go price ascending. The 7600 is a fantastic CPU, especially if you are looking to save money, but if you are going to go for this, which would be fine, it's a 6-core, it's got fantastic performance per core, but for today, I think we can push the boat out a little bit, and oh, this is tempting, look. Here's the thing, you've got a 7700 for £308, or you've got the 7800 X3D, which is basically the fastest gaming CPU, for £380, and it's going to be very tempting for us to go for this, but we're not going to do that, and I'll explain why, well, now. Basically because there's not going to be a huge amount of difference in terms of performance unless you go for a really high-end graphics card, and we're not going to quite do that here today, and I think you're almost better off saving the money, putting that towards a better GPU, and then in like a year or two, if you do need extra CPU performance, they would have come out with better CPUs. You can upgrade what you have, sell it on, make the money, swap it out for a better one, and the level of performance difference you're going to get is going to probably be a lot bigger than just going for the X3D now. But if you are going for like a £1,000 graphics card, then the X3D is definitely worth getting, because you are going to see some bottlenecking otherwise. Cool, so we've added that, and then now we can press on to, again, what is the most exciting bit, the graphics card. And I actually want to double down on AMD here, because while Nvidia do have fantastic options, especially at the high end, they have better ray tracing, they've got DLSS 3.5, I still think for what most people actually want for their gaming performance, for their gaming PC, is gaming performance. And in that regard, you just get much better bang for buck with AMD. So I would strongly advise you at least consider them, even if you've had an Nvidia card for years. So we go over to AMD, and the one I want us to look at are the 7800 XT. If you do want to go for the triple fan ones, these are going to have better cooling, but they are going to be more expensive. But for here, to maximize our bang for buck, we're instead going to go for something a bit cheaper. So we've got two options, both are actually from Sapphire. So we go for the slightly cheaper one, shall we? It's also worth noting that this card has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, whereas if you go for the competing 4070 that is going to cost more, that actually only has 12, so this is arguably more future-proof as well. We then need to step up our RAM to some DDR5 this time, because all of the AM5 motherboards are DDR5, but as you can see here, it has actually come down in price quite a lot. I mean, as long as you're not looking at the crazy fast kits anyway. I would advise looking at 6000 or 5600 megahertz for AMD, because it is quite sensitive to memory speeds, but more so also memory latency. Try and get the lower CAS values if you can, but you don't need to spend crazy amounts of money. So let's have a look what we have. But actually this is probably quite a nice little sweet spot here, because this is a C36 kit, 6000 megahertz of Kingston Fury RAM, and we've used this so many times on the channel, you guys are probably getting bored of it now. But fundamentally this one has an Expo profile, so it is more likely to work with your motherboard. If you ever do have issues, then try updating the BIOS, because more times than not this will actually fix the issue. But we're going to go with this and add it to our basket. 32 gig of RAM, so this is pretty future-proof really. Once again, we will definitely be needing some storage, and this time we are certainly going to go for Gen 4. Gen 5 is something you all want to grab in a few years, but I wouldn't advise going for it now because it's just too expensive. We've got a full video coming up on this, but a lot of them actually require active cooling as well, which is really annoying. We've filtered this down to Gen 4 kits, and obviously we will want to grab a terabyte because 500 gig, especially at this level, is just not enough. Let's have a look what we have. 980 Pro, no, that's a 500 gig. SN770 for £60, that's pretty good. Oh, 980 Pro. Once again, let's compare the speeds. 5000 essentially. The 980 Pro is way faster, as is the Corsair. So it's going to come down to whether you want to spend £10 more for slightly extra speed, and let's be honest, the answer is probably yes if you're spending this much money on a gaming PC. But as the Corsair is faster, we're going to add this one to our basket. As we're looking at a more premium build, I would highly recommend that you do go and grab yourself a proper cooler to make this look a lot better, to run quieter. And actually some of my favorites are these ones from Deepcool. You've got the AK620 for £70, or this one that I would recommend really with this level of CPU, which is the AK400. The benefit of going for one of those non-X Ryzen CPUs is they don't actually generate too much heat, so you don't need crazy cooling. And while we're on the topic of cooling, I now need to address the elephant in the room and the bad thing about the case that's down there. If I keep looking over there, it's to remind myself of what the NV5 actually looks like. And that is the fact that because you don't get those case fans included, adding them can get very expensive. Some people will be fine with this because you can have premium fans right at the gate. You don't have to throw anything away. You're not paying for fans you're not going to use. But I'd say you need at least 4 fans on that case, otherwise it will just look weird. I mean, 3 is definitely the minimum. So I want to see if we can do this a little bit more on the cheap, shall we say. Depends whether you want RGB. I assume most people do. Well, you can get some from Deepcool for a very cheap price of $28.99 on pre-order. And these will almost certainly be fine for case fans because you don't really need them to be loud anyway. But if you do want to turn them up and have like the best cooling or strap them to radiators and things, this probably isn't the way I would go. I mean, just for reference, if you want to go for some higher end ones, these Cooler Master, are these like crystallized ones? Not a fan of that. They're £60. Sorry, that's making me ill. Or at the lower end, and actually the ones I think we're going to use here, you can get some Sickle Flow 120s for £40. So we're going to add these, and this will be our baseline, because as I say, 3 fans really are going to be your minimum to have them on the side. The price of these will rack up quickly depending on what you want to do. So it's a fantastic case, built really well, but can get expensive, so be careful. So that's pretty much everything at this stage, really. I think it's just the power supply to go, and we are going to step it up this time. Look at a 750, maybe even an 850 watt. A lot of them are out of stock. I don't know what it is with power supplies at the moment, but they are often quite hard to find. The main thing is just that you get one from a reputable brand. So I mean, something like this actually from Seasonic is going to be a really good option because this is also ATX3 or compatible with the latest Gen 5 connector they have on NVIDIA GPUs. So even if you're not using that now, it probably is a good thing to factor in later. It's not cheap. We've definitely had cheaper power supplies on the channel, but 750 watts for something this modern probably is a good option, but I would say once again do some shopping around, see if you can find something near the £85–95 mark, especially grab something on sale. I mean, this actually isn't very cheap at all. We've gone up a lot. We've added £1,000. We've gone to £1,571. So this is very much a more high-end rig. I mean, obviously most of that is the graphics card, and there are quite a few things we could do to lower down the price because I can already see the comments, oh, that is so expensive, why are you recommending that? It's not just about recommending one specific rig, it's about talking you through what you can do when you're shopping so you can work out how to save money and what the compromises will be, shall we say. So let's go through it. You could knock £100 off pretty much this motherboard if you want to lose the E for the Extreme. You could definitely choose a different case that costs the same sort of money, then you wouldn't need those case fans. CPU I probably wouldn't change. I wouldn't want to go down to 6 cores unless you're looking at a cheaper graphics card. I mean, the graphics card itself, you can't really go down for anything cheaper and maintain the same performance, but obviously that should be, well, obvious. RAM, you could look at getting 16 gig. Some people recommend that, others won't. I'd be happy to do that if you were then happy to buy another kit later. SSD, not much you can do there without keeping the same speeds. Cooling, we've cheaped out on already. Fans, as I say, you can cut out if you're going for a different case. And then the power supply, yes, you can save a bit of money on. So realistically, for this level of performance, you're probably looking at a minimum of about 1,300 quid. But it is a lot of performance. This is actually going to be great for 4K gaming. I mean, they won't say that in the box. And the reason for that is because they want to upsell you to more expensive graphics cards. This is going to be great. This is going to do the lot, really, other than like 4K ray tracing. But as long as you're okay with that, this is going to be a fantastic rig. But once again, let me know your thoughts. Is this good or have I got it completely wrong? But let's move on to the high end.
High end? Who on earth does he think he is? This rig's already 1,500 quid.
And for this gaming PC, we're going to waste no time at all. We're going to jump straight into AMD CPUs, and we're going to pick up what is probably the best gaming CPU you can buy right now. Granted, the new i9, I mean, it hasn't really changed anything. It's pretty much the same one we had before. That is still definitely worth considering at the top end if you're going to do a lot on your PC at the same time. Obviously, it has more cores. The 7800X3D is limited to 8, but for most people and for proper gamers, that doesn't matter. Once again, I want to grab ourselves a B650E motherboard, and to be honest, the Asus ones really do seem to be like a pretty good bet, and you can step it up to the E version that actually has a few more features. It's got an extra slot, for example, for PCI Gen 5. I'm not sure how much difference that's going to make. It's also got like a clear CMOS button rather than a jumper. It's got slightly better power delivery and things. It's £40 in it, so I think we're going to go with that here today. We will have a look at the Gen 5 drives just to see if there's any deals to be had. I mean, at first it does look like it, but then the problem is this is a terabyte for 150 quid, which is what Gen 4 was about 2 or 3 years ago. So this is why I say just wait and grab yourself a Gen 4 drive now. So let's go back to Gen 4, filter it to 2 terabytes and see what we can get. Ah yes, our good old friend, the Rocket 4 Plus. Used this loads of times on the channel actually. This one is really fast. It's the 2 terabyte version, 130 quid. There you go, you see, for what is basically going to be the same drive as far as you're concerned. When you're actually playing your games, you're getting double the storage and it's costing you 30 quid less. Do we need to say any more? Well, yes, actually, because we do, of course, need to grab ourselves some memory. Once again, it's going to be DDR5. And actually, there's this really nice deal that we could have got in the last rig, actually, on the Vengeance RGB. This is 6000 megahertz, AMD Expo CAS 30. I think this is going to be ideal, really, for most rigs. Obviously, we can never ensure full compatibility in these videos because we're not actually building the rigs. All these tiny problems could potentially come up. But for all intents and purposes, as long as you're buying a decent board and it's got an AMD Expo profile, you should be okay. So we're adding this one to our basket, and then we'll proceed to have a look at some chassis. And it is going to vary quite a lot, actually, depending on where you get it from. Basically, not all suppliers will sell all cases. So do shop at a few different sites because sometimes there are some really good ones that are either a lot cheaper on one website or will be available on one, but not the other. So bear this in mind. But I'm after something a little bit on the larger size here that we can properly kit out. Can we go with a Landcall 216? No, because they don't sell it. So once again, let's go over to Overclockers. This is what I mean. Prime example. And here it is for £110. And I really love this case and I really love recommending it because it's pretty much the sweet spot, I think, for most people. I mean, there are so many different options, but a lot of them are really expensive. Many of them, as we saw in the previous, that don't come with the right fans and things. Whereas this actually comes with the 2 very large fans on the front as standard. You've got loads of different hardware you can put inside this. It's a big case, but it's not too big, and the build quality of this is fantastic. And perhaps more importantly, the price of this is also very good. £110 for all you get here is pretty crazy. And then at this stage I was going to move on to the power supply, but actually that would be incredibly boring. Let's talk about the most important thing, and let's do it in the proper order, because actually the first component you should choose really when picking out a new gaming PC is the graphics card. But obviously when you're talking high end, your options are still fairly limited really, but you've got to have an idea what it is that you want, because the prices will jump up so much between different brackets, and I don't want people spending money that they just don't need to spend. So always factor in the resolution that you're actually going to be playing at and the frame rate that you want to achieve, and then the games that you're going to be playing. Because as I say, if you're playing CSGO, don't spend £1,000 on a GPU. It's just not worth it. But if you're like me and you mainly play multiplayer titles and you want to maximize bang for buck, but still get loads of performance to play at 4K resolution, then the 7900 XTX is going to be your best bet. And they've actually got a couple of refurbished cards here if you want to save £100, but the cheapest one is here from MSI. It is their Gaming Trio Classic that I must confess I didn't really realize existed, but I think this is going to be our best bet really. 24 gigabytes of VRAM as well, so it's going to be very, very future-proof. Let's add this one to our basket and then head straight over to the power supply. And AMD actually recommend 850 watts for this. We have this one from Deepcool actually. I've used that before and it's fine, but personally speaking, I think at this end you're probably going to be looking at getting custom cables, and Cable Mod make it easy to go for a bigger brand as their cables are more compatible. So I would actually recommend just having a look at this Cooler Master one. It's rated gold for efficiency as well. You can go for platinum, but while it might save you money in the long run, I don't think it's going to be huge amounts, and I think saving the £40 now is probably going to be enough. So we're going to go with this. I'm being really silly. I was just about to price this up, but I realized there is one more thing we need to add, which is the cooler, and you can spend more money on this, but honestly, the thing I would buy for myself, and the one that I actually use is still from Deepcool, the LS720, or I think I'm using the 520, because it's smaller. This one here is the SE, which stands for Special Edition. It's slightly improved, it's got a different pump design, but here, once again, £100 for a triple radiator is fantastic. And the fact that it can be tuned to be very quiet as well, it doesn't have an LCD screen on it, but does it actually matter? You tell me. So I think we're going to go with this. We'll add that to our basket, and then that does actually bring us to the total price, which at the moment is £2,080, but we haven't actually added our case on. So I'll do that, and the total comes to £2,189.89, which is a lot of money. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think that's actually probably the starting price of the MacBook Pro 15-inch, if that makes you feel any better. But I think this is pretty much the exact rig I would go for. I love all of these components. I think they're going to give you a very good time. But I do understand that it is a lot of money and it's not going to be for everyone, which is why we do 3 rigs. So let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. Do you like this? Do you hate it? Am I right? Am I wrong? I really would love to hear from you. And don't forget to absolutely smash that like button, get yourself subscribed. And of course, if you do want to check out current pricing in your localized area on anything that's featured in this video, you can find it listed down below with our Amazon affiliate links. And while you're down there, why not check out Gigabyte's G5 gaming laptop? The G5 packs a 144Hz display into a solid, sturdy laptop body with up to a 12-core Intel processor and an RTX 4060 graphics card. No matter whether you're wanting multiplayer action or ray trace DLSS 3 immersion, the G5 is the laptop you've been waiting for. It even comes with a 2-year warranty. Grab yours today with the link down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one.